probably has some glitch with network because it has sent me a message that it has finished recording, but we're still here. Technology, can't trust it. Сессия закончилась?
Сессия.
Нет? У тебя тоже сессия? Я понимаю. Ой, вы, конечно, герои во время сессии еще курс проходите. Когда проходила сессию, я просто хотела выжить. Что зато в июле будете чувствовать свободу. Вот, наверное, чувствует уже за все годы. Можно отдохнуть. Это очень важно. Максимум я могу один день поспать 6 часов, и потом мне тогда неделю нужно спать по 10 часов.
Когда обычно нормально, 13 фото, вообще.
В жизни понедельник. Соки жизни из людей. Саша, кто пришел?
Сколько в этом стоит?
Ну, не знаю, я, например, учился.
По-моему, на дату резины 1100 в семестр. Если... даже дороже. Может,
Если 860.
сколько?
А у тебя сколько?
Ну это, ну да.
Платят деньги и страдают.
Да, типа,
Okay, so now we will create a JSON implementation, then we will move on to network. Okay, so first things first. In our NASA images, in the lib folder, let's create a file, a folder called assets. Remember, like we did with fonts on the main level, the same level as lib. Then in this asset folder, let's also create a folder called data. And in this data, I will send you a file. You will need to paste this file there. Just a second. Example. Okay, it's not like it was NASA. Assets data. Okay, so in this assets data, paste this file. Basically, what I did is I pinged the endpoint fruit all. I have copied all of its response in JSON that it has sent me, and I have pasted it into a file called fruit.json.
Да, можно сказать, вот вот.
Yes, you can press, I think, on the right 3 dots, and it says.
Я просто навел на код, и там есть облачко
Да,
с домом.
да, точно.
Случайно.
Лучше скачать. Просто удалили, лучше скачать. Все выше. И вот. Его и поместить. Нет, его можно не открывать, можно просто скачать. И потом поместить его в assets. Assets, потом папка data. И потом. Упс.
Файл, да.
Assets, смотри. Потом data.
Папка, да.
Да, assets, потом data. И потом fruit.json. This is because in assets we can have all kind of information like images, icons, fonts, and it's better to layer this data like to find it easier. So in here we will have JSON, which will be data for our repository. Okay, everyone did this so far? If you have, then remember how we had to add it in our project. If anyone had added images, do you remember what you had to specify? That's correct. So we need to use a keyword called assets and then specify the whole folder. So in order to specify just the whole folder and not every file, we can say data or data, I don't know, pronunciation, and slash like this, meaning that it will give access to the whole folder. Да.
Каждую картинку добавляла по отдельности.
Ну вот, можешь перерефакторить. Yes, so basically if you have a folder that should always be accessible, you can just specify the whole folder. Да, под get. Но сначала нужно написать assets, потом assets data, ну, прописать путь. Okay, now I think that we will do is we will create in our lib folder a new repository called local JSON fruit repository, or let's just call it JSON fruit repository. I will call it just a second. JSON fruit repository. It will implement fruit repository. Fruits repository. And we need to also override, okay, first import it, and then when we have imported, we need to override one method, the get fruits method. And in here, in the class, in the constructor, we will pass a new parameter. But first we need to make a parameter of this class. It will be called, will be final map string dynamic. Does this remind you of anything? Map string dynamic. Okay. What does it remind you of?
This file what we created method with dollar.
So this is the structure of a JSON. So we can call it JSON. And we can make it private also. And then we can pass it to the constructor just like this. Not the required name, but just one single parameter with this. Maybe this won't work like this because I have a different JSON. Well, we will see. It's one thing that I probably want to edit. Just give me a second. Wait. Best APIs. So, can you, in your fruit JSON, copy and paste all of this? Okay, it doesn't. I'll just send a new file. Sorry. I'll just send you a new file. Yes, just replace it. Okay, everyone did that? Replace the file? Okay, so now what we want to do in this method in the get fruits, we want to read the JSON file that, well, in this case, JSON map that was passed, and convert it into a list of strings with fruit names so that we can show them in our list here. Okay, so first things, let's review a little bit about the structure of our JSON. So we have the first field in here, right? So its name is what? Yes. So I will show you a better way also soon, but for now, let's do it like this. So we will say final items. We will read this items field from the JSON manually. I will show you how to do it completely automatically. So for now, just like this. Okay, so first we say JSON items like this. Okay. So we access by key items our JSON that we have passed in the constructor. And we will also cast it as list dynamic. And then Тогда игнорируй. Ты умнее, чем Android Studio, поэтому не всегда я нужно слушать. Okay, anyone remembers what we need to add in order to be able to just work with function without returning future.value? Yes, that's good, you will remember. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to convert this list of items into actual strings, but first we need to convert them into this fruit response so that we can parse the name of this fruit response, right? So let's say final names. Okay, no, that's not what, don't copy this. What was it? Fruit. Fruit response from JSON. And just wait, okay? Items. Item. Fruit response. JSON. Oops. Okay, like this. So there's a couple of things going on in here. Let's discuss them before you write. So first of all, we take the items that we have just read from the JSON. We cast them as list dynamic, so we definitely know that this is a list. And now we want to convert them from dynamic to string, okay? So in order to do that, we use a function on the list called map. And what a map function on a list does, it converts one format to another format. You will be using this a lot in your development, so map is a very useful function. And you need to tell it how exactly, having this item, do you want to convert it. So what we do is we use the constructor from our fruit response called from JSON. We pass this item that it's being iterated over, and we take its name parameter. Okay. Bart? No, I mean, you will write this code, but just any questions about like the logic of this? Okay, we will also need to return names. And remember, if we try to do it like this, it will scream at me that a value of type iterable can be returned from the method getFruit because it has return type of future list strings. So remember what we had to do with iterables. We had to call a function called toList like this. Wait a minute. Постепенно столько выстроить. Just one thing. Okay, so did this work for everyone? Need help? Let's start from this first line. So first of all, we have passed JSON as the parameter to the constructor of this JSON fruit repository. We haven't done this in main yet, but we will be passing the content from this file. So we will be passing the content from this file. JSON is just a map, as we have specified here. It is a map. The key of this map is string. So in order to access something in this map by its key, we need to pass some kind of a string. And looking at this through JSON, we see that it has a key called items. So we say JSON items. And just we take the responsibility because we know that in here we will have a list of dynamic objects because it's JSON, it doesn't map one-to-one to Dart. So dynamic object. And we assign this to a list called items, right? Okay, next thing, this one, I'll just move it up. We say that now we want to convert this list of dynamic into a list of strings. So we say, I'll just remove this completely, items map. So items map and general map is a function that takes one element and converts to another element. In our case, we want to convert it from dynamic to string. So in order to do that, we need to pass it function, and this function has one parameter. And we can give it this parameter any name, but usually I make it a singular name of the actual list title. So if this would be fruits, this would be fruit. So if this is items, this is item. And now I need to specify how to convert it from dynamic to a string. And I want to first convert it to my fruit response. So like this, fruit response. I do it with the constructor from JSON that we have created. Because this JSON accepts the parameter map string dynamic JSON. And because this item is dynamic, we can pass it to any parameter. Remember, we talked about this on one of the first lessons. It can backfire. For example, if this is not a map, we will see. Actually, I haven't worked with this API, so we will see if this will actually work. It will be a surprise for me too. And we pass this item here. So we have converted to the, this list of names of dynamic to fruit response. But we want a string. So we say that we don't want the whole object, we want just the name. Okay, and because every function such as map, where, and other functions of a list, they return not a list, but a iterable, it's like a superclass. When we want to specifically return a list, we need to just call this helper function called toList. Okay, makes more sense? Okay, it's my trailing comma. Now we have to do one last thing, is to actually connect this repository to our UI. And in order to do that, we need to go back to our main.dart. We need to, where was my, write this code. Just a second. So what we need to do is we first need to read everything that we have in the fruits JSON file into a local variable. So I'll call it fruits JSON. Just watch for now. Yeah, just watch. There's several things I need to do. First one is to call JSON decode to make it from string to a map. Then I also, this is specific Flutter variable called fruit bundle. I need to import the library that uses it. And because I use await here in this code, what do I need to do somewhere? Yes, in the main function, I need to add replacing. I need to just add the keyword this. Okay, so now we have this fruits JSON file. And we can create JSON repository like this. Final JSON fruits repository. I need to import it. I just remembered that in the constructor, it wanted a map with a string dynamic called JSON. So we passed the JSON that we have just read here. And now comes the best part. In our repository provider, instead of passing fruit repository, we can now pass JSON fruit repository. We can do that because both of them implement just fruits repository. And if you remember, here we specify specifically fruit repository. So we can pass anything that implements fruit repository. Because if I did like this, in memory fruit repository, it would tell me that the return type JSON fruit repository isn't an in-memory fruit repository as required by the closed context. But if I give it a superclass, it works fine. And now let's just first see if it works before you start copying this code. We need to relaunch from scratch. One last thing that we need to do. Just a second. I will explain this. I just need to make sure that this is how it works. Nice. You see what happened? Okay, I'll just make it bigger. I have a list of fruit: persimmon, strawberry, banana, tomato, pear, and so on. So basically, it has read this fruit JSON file. It has mapped all of those values to their names, and it has pasted here. But do you know what's the most beautiful thing about here? Is that after once creating this fruits page, just the fruits page, we didn't change anything here. We didn't change a single thing in order to change from just strings that are stored in memory to a JSON repository. This is because we have fruit repository as an abstract class in here. And we read it from context thanks to the repository provider. So it means that at the place where we define, we can substitute any kind of repositories that implement this fruit repository. This is really good for architecture because we can change implementations based on some conditions without needing to touch some of the layers. Because if we had specifically said that in fruit page we want in-memory repository like this, then we would also have to go here. It would not, first of all, work because it will not find in-memory fruit repository. And second of all, we would need to then change it to JSON repository. So we would have to touch this class. But because we initially said that it will be abstract fruit repository, we don't need to change anything here. Does this make sense? It's a really important concept.
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's remember again. We have fruit repository as an abstract class, right? It's an abstract class, meaning that we can't create an instance of repository of this class, remember? So we can't say final fruit, okay, just F. We can't do that. It will tell me that abstract classes can be instantiated. So we use abstract classes for them to act as superclasses so that they can have various children that have the same behavior. So we have described one method for this abstract class called getFruits. Its return type is future with list of strings. And we can use this as a type anywhere we want in code. So for example, in our fruits page, we use abstract class, right? So this is fruit repository. It's an abstract class fruit repository. It's not in memory fruit repository. It's not JSON fruit repository. It's the abstract version, meaning that this fruit repository can be any implementation of the fruit repository. And we have two. We have first one in memory fruit repository, which implements fruit repository. And we just return some random data here from this method. And we also have JSON fruit repository, which also implements fruit repository. And in here we map our JSON file to a list of strings. And the only place where we decide which repository we will be using is in the main Dart. So if we want to add any other repository, for example, Firebase, or we will be adding now network, it will also go here, and we won't need to change a single thing in the Fruits page. Does this make any sense?
Понял, я вопрос просто сейчас мы
Да.
добавили просто эти fruits.json.
Да,
Это мы, грубо говоря, просто локально вот
да,
добавили всё равно.
да,
То есть
сейчас.
пока ничего вообще
Нет.
не сделали, нет, там, ну,
Пока что нет, пока что локально, но нам нужен JSON для того, чтобы это,
можно было принять,
Да,
типа, оттуда.
да.
Я понял.
это первый шаг. Про интерфейсы понятно, что мы используем?
Да, это я сейчас, да. Ну, относительно, типа, понятно, все это и было так сложно будет сразу рассказать и сделать.
Сейчас. Как же объяснить по-хорошему? Представьте, что у нас может быть магазин со сладостями, да? Просто вот магазин со сладостями. И мы там продаем сладости. Вот мы говорим, это магазин сладостей. И я туда могу прийти, и там могут продаваться шоколад, там продаваться чупа-чупсы, карамельки и так далее. Все это сладость, правильно? И я могу сказать, сегодня я хочу такую сладость, а завтра я хочу там такую сладость. И, ну, то есть это шоколад и карамель все равно будет сладостью. То же самое тут. У нас есть суперкласс, fruit репозиторий, которая как бы сладость. И везде, где мне нужна сладость, я могу подставлять ее других имплементаций конкретной, то есть конкретно JSON fruits, например, шоколад, или конкретно in-memory fruits, то есть там карамель. Это все еще останется сладостью, просто что это будет другой тип, более конкретный тип. Но при этом в магазине сладости я все еще могу продавать просто сладости. Мне в магазине для этого не нужно перепрофилироваться в магазин картошки, там, например. Я все еще остаюсь магазином сладостей, даже если ко мне добавятся какие-то там новые, не знаю, что вообще, сладости, конфеты. Не знаю, насколько эта аналогия помогла. Вот, но тут важно понять, что везде, где мы говорим, что мы требуем родительский класс, суперкласс, например, fruits репозиторий, мы везде можем подставлять любую его имплементацию. То есть любой, кто имплементирует этот fruits репозиторий, в нашем случае in-memory image repository, то есть, image, fruit, он буквально говорит, что я ребенок fruits репозитория. То есть везде, где ты хочешь fruits репозиторий, ты можешь подставлять меня. То же самое говорит JSON fruits репозиторий. Говорит, я тоже ребенок fruits репозитория. И везде, где ты хочешь fruits репозиторий, ты можешь подставлять меня. Следовательно, fruits page может сказать, мне вообще по барабану, какой fruits репозиторий мне передадите, просто дайте мне хоть какой-нибудь fruits репозиторий. Потому что он работает только с его интерфейсом, только вот с этим методом. Это единственное, что он знает и что он умеет. И main говорит, я сейчас все разрулю, и я хочу, чтобы сейчас мы передавали JSON конкретно в репозиторий. Но так как мы вот тут репозиторий провайдер, это тот, кто именно доставляет все эти репозитории, сказали, что мы будем везде, где требуется fruits репозиторий, то есть в нашем fruits page, везде, где он требуется, мы будем подавать вот этот. А этот у нас JSON fruits репозиторий. То есть если мы сейчас поменяем вот этот JSON fruits репозиторий на просто fruits репозиторий, один файл я меняю, да, вот только вот тут одну строчку я меняю. Я сейчас перезапущу приложение. И у меня поменялось на все, что было в in-memory репозитории. Дома будете делать книжки, НАСУ. Надеюсь, что станет чуть больше понятно, когда это напишете. Окей? Теперь давайте сделаем так, чтобы вот это вот у вас все тоже было. Надо сначала прочитать из root bundle все, что находится в fruits JSON, записать эту переменную fruit JSON, создать репозиторий, JSON fruits репозиторий, передать в конструктор fruit JSON и в репозиторий провайдер заменить fruits репозиторий на JSON fruits. Вот этот вот. 21 по 24 строчку. Начало, а потом на 28 заменить. Yes. It's okay. First, we need to have a variable into which we read the JSON file, the fruit.json. Then we create the JSON fruit repository, and then in the repository provider, we change the implementation from fruits to JSON fruit repository.
What's the difference between assets and assets and star?
Assets with star. Not sure. Sure. Assets
Idea also of first function.
like this.
So assets.
Async with star.
Async,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. This is a more advanced topic, but I will try to explain it in a couple of words. So we have only used futures for now. So something that happened once. It happens in some time, but it happens only once, right? So we only call the get fruit once. We have called it and we have got the results. These are futures. There are also streams. And streams, it's like a list of futures. So for example, you can listen to a stream and it will give you 10 futures, one after another, after another, after another. So you can listen to something continuously. And for that, you need to use async with star. It's the same as, not same, but similar concept as streams observables in Java.
We should add a Dart library Dart convert, right?
Yes, Dart convert. Не забывайте, мы не просто откуда-то берем информацию, которая вот теперь тут после пользователя на JSON. Выделим. Да. Тут тоже. И вот как он. Теперь попробуем.
Я запустил, он типа не крутится. Как это здесь спустить?
Не крутится, но потому что мы там особо мы не ждем ничего.
Что там рецепция?
Нет, должен быть список из JSON. Перезапусти.
Не больше нет, просто типа потому что они как будто их там не миллиарды бесконечно. Или их там
А их там не миллиард,
А,
конечно. Их там столько,
тогда
сколько у нас в
ладно.
JSON файле. У вас
Точно,
это хорошо?
точно.
Нет? Так. Берем свой тип. Стоп.
У тебя assets.
Да.
А,
Ага, точно. Я у некоторых из вас работает, скорее всего, там должна быть ошибка. Мы вначале самой первой строкой должны вот это вот написать еще.
Ну я это написал.
Да, поэтому не работает. Да, я забыла. You need to write this. Basically, this is a helper function that makes sure that the widgets API is initialized before we actually start to do something. It's required to read from fruit bundle for whatever reason.
Should be fruit and
Should be fruits and the name of the fruit. All this works for you?
Yeah, yes, I added also the stuff.
That? Yeah.
Просто 3 раза подряд запустить, чтобы он запустился.
Надо прямо остановить.
Да, да.
Надо, ну, не просто зеленую кнопочку где нажать, надо остановить и запустить заново. М? Ну вот, если мы делаем что-то в мейне, особенно связанное с файловой системой, если мы что-то добавляли в PubSpec и так далее, то тогда. Okay, awesome. Now to the most fun part, to actually get this information from the network. For that, we need to add 2 libraries. Not 2 libraries, actually, just one. Deal. Deal package.
Мы добавляем лагерь, их нужно каждый раз новый проект, просто
Да.
50 минут.
Да.
И можно просто с прошлого скопировать.
Да, но нужно посмотреть, что версии не поднялись. Так что
Ну,
да.
это будет
Есть,
надо.
есть функция pub upgrade, она автоматически проходит по твоему PubSpec YAML и тебе обновляет версии. Так что можно использовать так. We needed to ingest the dependencies as usual. Just add the Duo library to your dependencies and run pub-get. Okay, I had a slide that I forgot to show you. This one. It's the example is with books, but it's exactly the same thing with fruit. So the repository pattern. See, we have the books page. So this is the page that is responsible for showing information to the user. So the user interface. It has dependency on books repository. You can understand it as fruits repository. So this is an abstract class, right? So it's abstract and it has just one method, get all books or get all fruit or get all images, whatever. And books page only knows about existence of this class. So that's the only communication that is happening over here. Then where we provide this dependency, in our case, it's a main Dart, we can decide which of the many implementations of this book repository do we want to use. For example, we can use network repository, which by the name, we would assume that it goes to the network to fetch the data about books. We can use in-memory books repository, and in-memory in programming means that it's something that is stored in memory while your program is active. So in-memory books repository. Then there is local JSON books repository, which reads from a local JSON file. And then there's, for example, Firebase repository. We use Firebase as a service. Each of these repositories has their own dependencies. For example, for Firebase, it's Firebase. For local JSON books repository, it can be file provider or asset bundle, but we just pass it as a string. And in network repository, we will have something that goes to the API, and we will call it API client, because remember this was this image. We are the client. This is the API. So we are the client of this API. Okay, this is where the name comes from. So this abstraction helps us to never change the books page if we change something in here, because books page only talks to books repository, and whatever goes in the other layers, we really don't care about that. Like the books page doesn't care about that. This makes us focus only on implementing the actual business logic in here, because UI stays the same. Okay, and we are done with this part. We already have a memory books repository, JSON repository. Firebase we won't be working with at all in this course, but we will be doing network. And for network, we need an API client. Okay, so back to our NASA images, which now is a fruit repository, or whatever. And let's create, first of all, no, let me think. Where will we start? Okay, let's start with the network client. We will call it Fruit API client. We will call it class Fruits API client. Okay, everyone got this far? Okay, so now this is the place where DO comes in hand. And DO is a special library that will help us perform all of those requests. The get request, post request, it just gives us some convenience tools that allow us to make those requests much easier. You know, like Scaffold gives us the opportunity to add bottom navigation, app bar, and so on much easier. The same way DO, it's a very stupid name. I have no idea why it's called this way, but basically it gives us opportunity to use network methods much easier. So we need an instance of this DO. We will say final DO. This. For that, we need to import DO. And in the same way, because we will just have one parameter in here, the same way like we did it with JSON repository, we'll just pass DO as a positional one single parameter. Everyone good so far? Did you run pub-get? Did you add the library DO? It's in chat. We need to add the library DO. And when we add a library, well, we can add several. But always when we add the last library, we need to run pub-get to actually download this library to our local repository. Okay, and then our fruit after. So okay, so we will return to how to create this DO object soon. But for now, let's implement actual network methods. And the first method that we will create is called, we want a future, almost always a future. It will always also be a list, but this time it will be a list not of strings, but actual fruit response. Okay, so actual fruit response. Because we are currently mimicking the API exactly the same way as it is here in Postman. So we want to return a list of fruit response. Don't forget to also import it. And we will call this method get all fruits. And we will now actually do the network call. For that, we need to, okay, let's start from here. What do we need to add here? Here, the, yep. Async coming from asynchronous. Okay, so final response, we will be assigning a response. And this will be really easy. We will say Dio.get. Remember the method get, it's this one from the Postman, because Dio also, just watch, Dio also has post, Dio has put, Dio has delete. So basically we can just use it like that without thinking much. So we say Dio get, and what Dio wants in get is the path. Do you remember what the path is? Okay. Anyone else?
Something, yes.
Okay, this little part is the path. We don't pass the whole URL. We don't pass the base URL. We just pass the path. Okay. Yes, it's fruit, but also fruit and one more. It's fruit all, like this. Okay. So we can copy paste it, or we can write it fruit all. Keep Postman at hand so that you can always look up the URL, the response, and so on. And we will say fruit all. I just don't remember, do we need, okay, we don't need to pass slash. Okay, we get, so we say Dio get fruit all. This fruit all doesn't come from the sky, it comes from here. Because in here, fruit all is the path. And what is this called? The other part? This.
Base.
Yes, this is called base URL because it is called base URL because it will be the same for all of the requests to this API, and we'll only change the path. So only this will change in Dio, but we will pass this as base URL. We will soon see how to set base URL. For now, we only care about the path. Okay, so say fruit all. And now because get returns future response dynamic, we need to get not future, but the response dynamic. For that, we say await before Dio get. Okay, now response, if you watch, if you see it, it says response dynamic. And so response is a special class that also has some fields. And we can say final, for example, JSON equals response data, which is also dynamic. And we want to cast it as list dynamic. Remember, exactly the same way as we did here with JSON, except this time we won't be accessing items, because if you remember, items I added myself and we re-uploaded the file. If we take a look at the response, a really, really important thing to notice about JSON, where is it? It's my body. Okay, just a second. Hey, where are you? Oh, it's here. So, very important to know about JSON. Giving me a hard time. I'm lost. Sorry. Where are you? Here you are. Okay, so if we have a bracket like this, a square bracket, it means that this is a list of JSON items. If we have a curly brace like this, it means this is a JSON object. Okay, so square, JSON list, curly, JSON object. This is crucial because sometimes when you try to parse a JSON object, it will scream at you that it doesn't recognize JSON objects, it sees a JSON list, and vice versa. So we always check the response and understand what we're waiting for. So we are waiting for the topmost we start reading the response like from the very first line, and we see that it starts with a list. So we know that it will be a list, and because JSON is dynamic, it will be a list of dynamic. Okay. In here, it's a different example. We access straight the key items, because if we take a look here, this whole file on line number 1 starts with a curly brace. It means it's a JSON object, not a list, and it's already dynamic. So we ask the dynamic for items, and items is a list. So we say JSON items, which we know is a list, and now we can cast it to list dynamic. Okay, and same way here, except that we cast the whole response to dynamic, because we see that here in our real life response, it starts with a square bracket. It will make sense. I promise you, it's a lot of new information, but with practice, it makes sense. No one got it just from one lecture or not, or something like that. It all takes time. First time you see it, it's the hardest, but with more and more and more apps, with more and more and more practice, it will become easier. It's like you have learned to read, right? It was hard at first, like letter by letter, a long time, but now like, I don't know if you read books still, but in general, like reading is second nature. This will also become second nature, but you need to read a lot in order for this to happen. Okay, so now we have JSON, which is a list dynamic, and we do exactly the same thing that we did before. So let's say final fruits, and we want equals JSON. What was the function if I want to change from one type to another type on the list? Map. Okay. Map. And it wants one parameter, which is a function. And I will say fruit. And I just need to call the constructor of my fruit response from JSON and pass it the fruit. Okay, and then we just need to return our fruit to list. And now this all compiles. But up to this point, we have created a Fruits API client. But remember, with what does the fruit page talk to? To whom? Okay, not with what, but from where does our fruit page get information about fruits?
At the moment, we would page that information from us. So that's,
Yes.
JSON.
Okay, that's specific, but just exactly the fruit page. Where does the fruit page get its information from? Yes, exactly. It's right. It's right that it gets the information from JSON. That's correct. It's just that specifically the fruit page talks to just fruits repository, and only we in main Dart know that it talks to JSON fruit repository. So it talks to fruit repository, and we don't want to change anything in our fruit page. So we need to create another repository that will talk to our Fruits API client. And we will call it what? I have already spoiled you this a couple of times. Okay, let's call it network Fruits repository. Okay, and it will be class work fruits repository, which implements. What does it implement? Go away. Go away. Fruits repository. Right. And it means that we need to override one method, which is getFruits. But we will be getting the fruits from the Fruits API client, which means that we need to pass this Fruits API client to our network fruit repository, right? So our network fruit repository will have an internal field called Fruits API client, and we can call it Fruit API client. А что ты заимплементил? Логично. Испугал. Да. Нужна какая-то помощь. Okay, we can move on. So back in the Fruits repository, it's just the same way as we did previous couple of times. Pass the Fruits API clients to the constructor. And now, what do we need to add here to make it icing? Okay, I just said it with icing. It's hard to not make it obvious. Okay, so we want to get the response from Fruits API client, and then we want to map it to the string, right? So we want final fruits. Okay, thank you. Pick up the pilot. We want fruits, which will be await, because Fruits API client also returns a future. And we ask for all fruits. And if we try to return just fruits, it will say no, because it's a list of fruit response, and we want a list of strings. So we can say fruits, map fruit, and take its name and to list. Actually, you know what? Let's not return not just a name, but for the sake of it, just say the whole thing to string, fruit to string. So in here we had name, like this, but we changed this name to a method called toString, so that we see all of the information about the fruit. Okay, everyone did this? Okay. Skip a couple of lines. And now we will have only one thing left, is to connect all of this in our main Dart file. But we will also have a couple of things to create, because we have Fruits API client to create, which accepts a DO, which we also need to create. And we also need to create network fruit repository. So we have 3 classes that we need to create. In this case, this is called dependency injection because instead of actually creating the Fruits API client ourselves here in the network Fruits repository, it's just a dependency that gets provided or also gets injected here in the constructor. So the network Fruits repository doesn't know anything about how to actually create this Fruits API client because it gets it from the constructor. On lesson 10 or 11, we'll see. I will show you how this is useful when we will be writing unit tests for our code. Unit tests is a technique on how to, with code, test our other code. So yeah. Makes sense, right? Okay, you good? How much? Don't take it away. Så, ja, det är Okay, so going back to our main Dart. Yes. No? Yes, about what? Okay, Semicolon? Нет. Английский тоже.
Так.
Да, semicolon. Yeah,
Вот и что тоже. Или, по-моему,
that's weird because usually in Latvian, I remember when I was.
Calls, yeah, это же перепункты.
No, I just remember in Latvian, all of the technical terms were like specific Latvian words, like lietotne or app. Like every normal person calls it an application, but Latvian, well, not Latvian, but Latvian technical literature calls it lietotne, and so on. So yeah.
Yes. Semicolon Latvian is also the same.
Wow.
Easy.
Okay.
Это у нас точка.
Точка.
Все просто. Что видно, что так говорили.
Да. Very точно. Okay. Let's go back to our main Dart and let's finally create this network repository. So moving our JSON fruit and fruit repository to the top. And after this, in here, we will be creating in the backwards order. First, we need to create DO. Then we need to create API client. And then we need to create the repository. Okay. So starting with DO, we need to say final DO equals DO. Then in DO, we need to pass a parameter called base options. And this base options has several different parameters. And one of them should already sound familiar because we have discussed it. Yes, exactly. So DO is like really helpful because it allows us to do all of those things. And this can also be helpful if you have various environments like staging and production, and you can just change base URL here. And again, nothing changes in your API client. So this is really useful. And in base URL, we need to paste everything that we had in here before the fruit all, but I just don't remember. Do we need the backslash or not? Let me quickly check. I hope so, but I remember probably because I never remember. Do we need it or do we not need it? We need it. Okay, we need it. Yes. So in here in base URL, we copy everything before fruit from Postman, this fruityvice.com /API. Maybe it's smarter. Maybe it can check. So I don't know. We can experiment later. Okay, and in base URL, we specify this Fruityvice API from Postman. Everyone understand where to get this from?
Ну, я закрыл, не можно ставить.
Окей, я пришлю в чат, не надо писать руками. Это точно будут, ссылками точно будут проблемы, ошибки. Это классика. Где-то не тот символ, потом ничего не работает. Okay, so for now, this deal is enough, but if you want, you can also check out later on. There are many options in base options, like timeouts, parameters, headers, if you want headers for every single request. There's also interceptors. We will talk about those later. And now let's create the network, not the network, but the Fruits API client. So final API client. And we need to just pass the DO to the constructor. And after that, we need to create our network fruit repository and pass Fruits API client as parameter. And one last thing, in repository provider, change from JSON fruit repository to network fruit repository. And it will be the moment of truth if this will work. Поменяли там, где мы в репозитории провайдер говорили, что мы хотим JSON fruit репозиторий, сейчас мы хотим network репозиторий. В какой момент это быстро? Право? Так мы тут просто вызвали конструктора и передали. Что? Да, в репозитории провайдер. Валентин, что-то помочь? Все хорошо? Точно? Артур?
Все будет в порядке.
Да.
Ну, просто пишу. And when you're done. Надо. У нас должно быть 3 новых переменных. Dio, API клиент и репозиторий. И последний только репозиторий мы в репозиторий провайдер отдаем. And if you run it, you should see a list of fruit response with all of the information. Not looking pretty yet, but it's still, at least it's actually fetching information from the internet. Что? Ну, посмотри, что у него в конструкторе. Построить класс, это посмотри, что у него в конструкторе. API клиент, правильно? Вот уже API клиент, посмотри, где этот параметр. Вот тут. Да. Там, где ты его создавал, нет, это класс, а тебе нужно сам. Ну, main, да, все правильно. Ты его создавал где? Вот ты его создавал, значит, тебе его нужно передать. Следовательно, ты не можешь его сюда передать, потому что мы должны объявлять его после моего создания. Надо на другую строчку перенести это. In Dart, it's really important. If you do it like this, for example, yes, it reads top to bottom. So at this point, DO does not exist yet. So we need to create it only after we have created DO. Okay, does this work for everyone? Or you're still... Валентин, сработает? Артур? Момент истины. Работает? Сейчас узнаем. Ага, помочь или...
Ты, смотри, он тебе подсказывает, в каком файле, во-первых.
Ну,
Да, и он тебе орет на эту. Сам его не нужно тащить. Вот смотри, вот вернись. Вот наведи курсор. Он тебе говорит, он тебе прям подсказывает, говорит, попробуй найти другую библиотеку для твоих нужд. Но дело в том, что она подсвечивается серым, значит, она вообще не используется. Значит, ее можно вообще смело удалять.
Это прям
Не знаю. Должно. Это warning, это такое. Должно выглядеть так, что он тебе весь fruit response показывает текстом. Работает?
Нет,
Вы не добавляли новых провайдеров? Просто перейти. Может быть, да. Мы здесь ему делали, что класс и и Okay, one last interesting thing that we want to take a look at is how to do nested parameters. Okay, so at this point we have only single level parameters, right? We have string ID, and we don't have any other custom objects inside. But if we take a look at the API, we see that we have a field called nutritions, which itself is a JSON object with fields. So if we want to also have those fields available in our model, we need to add another class. So we can do it in the same file at the bottom of your class. Create a new one, call it class. What was it called? Yes. Fruit nutritions response. It will also extend the gradable. Называется fruit nutritions. Вот такое же слово, как вот здесь. Вот. I have some error here. Sort. it is really helpful to have Postman at hand because you can always check what parameters there are, what the links, what everything. So please, if you have it closed, open it. Okay, and then in here in nutritions, we just need to specify 5 parameters: calories, fat, sugar, carbohydrates, and protein. And they are all doubles except calories. Calories is an integer from what I see. Okay, final in calories. Final double carbohydrates, which was the first one? Fat, sugar. Final double fat, double sugar, and final double protein. Be mindful of the names. They have to be the same as the names in JSON. Don't forget to specify them all in the props. And don't forget to create a constructor. So tell me when you're done. Да, он мне тоже подчеркивает, хотя я его скопировал. Мгм.
Просто может понравиться, еще да.
Okay, everyone done? Okay, so now what we want is we want to add this as a field to our fruit response. And keep in mind that we also need to call it this nutritions word. So we say final fruit nutritions response nutritions. I don't know why it doesn't understand it. It's a same word. It's not like it. Anyway, give it to the constructor. Что? Что?
Нет, предыдущий фактор.
Мы в этом же файле находились. А ты его создавал в новом файле? Файл назывался Fruits JSON. Okay, and don't forget to add this field to the props. And now there's one last thing that we need to do. If we have a nested field, which is not like string, integer, or double, or boolean, but a nested JSON, in our JSON's realizable annotation, we need to specify a special flag called explicit to JSON true, which means that it will go through all of the children of this class and generate code for them. Okay, so in JSON's realizable, we said explicit to JSON equals true. And any ideas what one last thing we need to do to make this all work? Regenerate. That's correct. So after you added the field, added the flag explicit to JSON true, go to your terminal and rerun the same Flutter pub run build runner build command that we have already run.
This Flutter pub run.
Yes, yes. And it could not use the support type. Yes, okay, something failed. Could not generate from JSON code for nutritions to support the type fruit okay. I also need, yes, but we also need to mark, I think, this fruit nutrition response with the JSON realizable annotation. So just copy it. Что? Что ты пропустил? Да, этот файл мы не трогаем, это водогенерированный файл. Вернись на свой response. Да, то есть тут вкладку забыл, тут JSON realizable, внутри нет, тех JSON realizable. Да, и вот в скобках должен писать explicit, вот этот флаг, и true. Теперь то же самое надо всю скобку нужно скопировать и над конструктором, да, над конструктором другого класса, вот этого его конструктора. Да. И это может быть конструктор. И нужно перегнать тот скрипт.
Есть идея, я вот добавил G.
Yes. Значит, вообще должно. Да. У тебя файл не перегенерился? Ты прогнал команду? Meanwhile, you need to think why are those different?
Я его повторю. Это новый класс.
Над каждым классом, для которого нам нужно генерировать эти методы. Вот. Это не важно. Сейчас не надо обращать внимание. Okay, there's a couple of things. First is it's trying to call the from JSON in here. Look at the generated code file. In nutritions, it tries to call the from JSON constructor of from fruit nutrition's response class, but we don't have such a constructor, so that's why it can't find it. Another thing is it's in here we have fruit response to JSON. The same way it does not have this converter to JSON. But another thing that we need to care about is that we actually don't use to JSON anywhere, right? We only convert from JSON. So if we don't even want to use to JSON at all, we can use another flag in our JSON serializable, creates to JSON false. Okay, another flag called creates to JSON, give it a value of false. And also copy this to the second class. And after that, regenerate again.
So опять будет пакет.
А там надо выбрать.
Откуда все эти команды здесь могли просто запомнить? Ну, типа, ну, вот
Да. Можно создать скрипт. Classes, например, скрипт какой-нибудь generate files. Ну, я лично так люблю делать. И просто эту команду сюда запейстить. Ну, или там целые скрипты иногда бывают. И потом ее просто можно со студии, если у вас установлен этот сам, прогонять, не нужно даже терминал открывать, он сам все делает. Это простой ваш скрипт. Это, во-первых, как можно облегчить себе, автоматизировать немножко, а во-вторых, сейчас найду эту документацию и вам скину. Вот тут она лежит, можно посмотреть, почитать. И там команды тоже все есть. Okay, and now if we open the generated class, we see that we only have from JSON left, but we still don't have the from JSON for the nutritions. So we need to add this constructor, the same one that, like the same as we had in here. Remember the factory fruit response from JSON. Now we need to add the same one, but for fruit nutrition response. Okay, so we say factory fruit nutrition response from JSON, accept a map, and use that constructor. You can copy the factory constructor from that other class and just update the names. And after that, we can run the app also and see if this shows up information. Nice. Understand? Just Нет, мы никогда не трогаем этот файл. Регенерированный файл с скрипками никогда не трогаем. Смотри на самом деле. Первое случай. Да, значит, никогда. Да. Скопируй. Надеюсь, что тут. А ты... Это надо. Yes, okay, so now now that everything works, we'll give you a task. I will first describe it in words and then I will describe it in chat. So now that it's all a bunch of text, we want to make it a bit more usable. So first of all, we will wrap each item in a padding and in a gesture detector. On top of this item, I want you to open a new page. And in this new page, you will need to do a new request. So in Fruit API client, you will need to add a new request. I will give you all the example. It will return just one fruit response. Get fruit, string name, and you will need to implement this one, the fruit banana one. But except instead of pasting banana specifically, we will be making it a variable that you pass from this list. Okay, so you will need to take the name variable from fruit response, pass it as the parameter to the next page, and use this parameter in order to perform a request and show this information. Okay, it's a lot, but step by step. I will now describe it in chat. Okay, I have pasted the task. So step by step, start doing it. Oh, I forgot that you actually need to wrap it in a gesture detector. This one. Что не работает?
тут не добавить еще из стороны.
Yeah. I show you one thing. Let's quickly check it out. Second. Okay, so okay. Sure. So there are several ways how we can actually see what's going on. Like we want to log all of the requests and responses to see in the console at least if they're happening and what is their format. So there's a couple of things we can do. First, we can give Duo what is called an interceptor. And interceptor is a special thing that takes every single request and does what you tell it to do with this request. And we will be adding an interceptor called log interceptor. And basically what this log interceptor does is just logs everything to the console. You can just watch and I will send this to you so you can copy and paste it because it's not that important. So request true, request response better. True, request true, and response There's no such thing. Okay, so basically what we tell is that intercept every single request and log it to the console. Okay, so if, for example, I will send you this code. If I will run it now, I will see in my console a lot of things happening. First, I see that request has been done and the URI to which was the request, the method of this request, the response type of this request, and then some time later, I also get response. I can see its status code. I can see all of the headers, and I can even see the response text. Okay, so sometimes if you want to check what's going on, if the requests are even being sent, you want to log them. One more way to do that is to launch what is called Flutter DevTools. It's this little blue Dart icon somewhere in the console. It might be in a different place. You can open it. It will show you a huge console with all kind of tools. And you can switch to network tab. And for now, there won't be any requests because we have started this DevTools after we have performed the request. But if you have any other requests further in your app, then they will also show up here. For the logging interceptor, I will send you code, but did everyone manage to open Flutter DevTools? And find this little blue icon called Open Flutter DevTools. It should open a window in the browser. So put it. Для этого должно быть приложение запущено. Okay, and for the interceptor, I will send you the code. Попробуй на эмуляторе. Ты пытался рекурсивно в один конструктор засунуть тот же item, и он тебя завязал. Внимательно смотрим, что оно будет. Anyone needs help? Or just time? You let me know if
First we find this. This back to the Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, this one. I guess this messed up my names. Director executive not police and there's like 20 files.
Yes, exactly. But I want to create more files so that you start confusing, and then we will work on architecture, because when you have 3 files, having architecture
Yeah.
just makes sense. So
Because when I didn't even try checking network.
yeah,
Actually, I could check in columns. If file needs.
Space, which is about slowly future instead.
но не в fruits page, а в fruits details page.
Новый пейдж.
Да, мы вот в новом пейдже будем загружать fruits details. Смотри, у нас есть список айтемов, у нас есть там fruits, да, его name. Ну, вот строка, которая есть, мы должны передавать name.
Да.
То есть мы сейчас toString делаем, а надо передавать name. Мы берем этот параметр. Окей, зашла вперед. У нас есть список айтемов fruits. Мы нажимаем на него, да, на один из списка.
Да.
Мы открываем страницу fruit details page. Новую страницу, у нас ее еще нету. И вот в этой fruit details page мы передаем name фрукта, на который мы нажали. И используя этот name,
Нет,
да.
да. Сайты, типа, там,
Да.
ну, не...
Да. Fruit details page будет выглядеть практически так же, как fruits page, только у него будет один дополнительный параметр name, и он будет этот name передавать в network repository. Кому-то что-то подсказать еще? Да, вопрос. С чем проблема?
Стараться на все должно.
На каждый item. Да.
что-то такого.
Да, но лучше just детектор над пазинком, чтобы у тебя было больше места, на которое этап происходит. То есть сначала пазинка, а над ним just детектор. Да. Да. Да, вот. Самой функции aspect должен быть параметр в локальном коде. В твоем network истории вот, ну, ты попробуй создать табличку, открой ее, и вот поймешь, что
Получается, нужно передать спам.
нет, ну, здесь у тебя должен быть, здесь ты прям должен был вопрос, когда тут будет get on true, будет get конкретный true, Postman. Приложение Postman. Сейчас. Новый запрос.
Да.
Иди дальше.
Еще раз, а что Zero?
Zio — это библиотека. Само слово, я не знаю, что оно обозначает. Какой-то рандомный просто. И эта библиотека помогает нам делать вот эти запросы в сеть. Почему название такое, реально не знаю. Okay, thank you all. Everyone. Welcome, anything? The home tasks will be to finish this, of course. Also will be to add API to our books library. It will be mandatory because we will continue working with the books library app. It's the biggest app which we will be working throughout the whole course. And optional one will be to add NASA API if you will have time, if you would want to practice, we'll also be adding that. Also, I'm going away for the end of until the end of this week. I will be available from mobile, so if you have questions, I'll try to be answered from my phone. But just in case, send me screenshots so that I understand what's going on. Okay. Yeah, actually, I'm leaving in a couple of hours, so straight after this course. That's why we moved from Wednesday to today, because I won't be in here.
Чтобы где-то свою ветку надо фетч сделать.
Full page, он тебя просто скажет, если изменения, но он тебе их не возьмет. Все есть изменения? Да. Пока что издательство, которые recently invented, может дать срок на
Вот нет.
Самое здесь, только он тебя будет делать не get fruits call, а он тебя будет делать get fruits и подставлять параметры. И он тебя будет получать не список, а один скопировать документ и начни исправлять по принципу, которому тебе нужно. Тебе нужно не all вставлять параметры, это первое, что меняется. Да, да. А второе, у тебя JSON получает не список, а просто JSON есть. Он статус, у тебя нужно список возвращать, а один смотри, ну тут много есть. Только мешает ну, это не так плохо. Да, нужно написать новый, который будет возвращать тоже фьючер, но не лист, а просто функционал. Значит, прямо написать, будет возникать вопросы. Да, тут это ответ, это вот ответ. Смотри, я вот
Сюда получается. Так, это все? А что это?
S — это мы говорим, что тот параметр, который вот мы сейчас используем, в нашем случае response data, он будет такого-то типа. То есть, если у нас параметр какого-то более общего типа, например, dynamic, да, то есть response data dynamic, мы хотим его, мы вот точно 100% уверены, что это будет из dynamic, мы как разработчики, мы можем сказать, что закастить его, это называется кастинг, dynamic, она вот есть dynamic. Это опасная процедура, потому что если в рантайме окажется, что это не один динамик, а что-то другое, он не то, что, ну, типа, не понимает, что хочет. Вот. Но в нашем случае мы точно знаем, что это должен быть список, поэтому
То есть
можем так
в данном
делать.
случае означает, что будет список, и вернее, в твоем случае name.
Нет. В твоем случае не нужно оказывать ничего. Вообще. Мы по этому списку потом генерируем. И превращаем его из одного вещи в список. Превращаем его тут уже просто так иксом. Нужно делать список. Input response, передать ему JSON параметр, потом все его список. Далее все, что
Да, сложная тема. Согласна. Поэтому важно, чтобы вы сами тоже все печатали, думали, что куда. Никита, на помощь. Так, у тебя почти все выглядит правильно, только тебе нужно возвращать не response дату, а тебе нужно прям создать fruit response из этой response. Назови этот fruit не fruit, а JSON. Теперь создай fruit. И какой у нас был конструктор для fruit response, чтобы JSON создавать? Выше в этом файле есть? Нет. Это мы мапили JSON. Она конструктор. Что такое конструктор?
я понял.
Да, это фон. Придется печатать, иначе импорт ответствие. JSON мы туда передали. Вроде все окей. Только подожди. Единственное, что помнишь, мы говорили про base URL. Что нам base URL не нужно говорить, нам нужно говорить только путь. Только слэш тоже передний выбрать. Окей, делай дальше. Игорь?
Да. Да.
Хочешь, садись на мое место?
Да, садись, все равно.
Я получится, как будет.
Подключить. Что это? Я все равно уже ничего не показывать не буду.
Пару секунд.